Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to another Intensive Care Hotline and Intensive Care at Home live stream. And welcome to another Ask Me Anything episode and live show. I'm your host, Patrik Hutzel, and I'm here to answer your questions as it relates to you having a loved one in intensive care. Also want to welcome any viewers that watch this on replay. You can also leave your comments below and I will get to them eventually. But obviously your best bet is to come onto these live shows and get your questions answered. You can type those questions into the chat pad, or you can come on live on the show by joining me here on the live stream, and you can talk to me directly, and you can do so by clicking on this link that I am posting here in the chat pad. So if you click on this link, StreamYard, you can join me here live on the show and talk to me directly. Now, before we get started, what makes me qualified to answer questions for families in intensive care? Again, my name is Patrik Hutzel. I'm the founder of IntensiveCareHotline.com. It's a consulting and advocacy service for families in intensive care. And I am a critical care nurse by background, have been working in intensive care/critical care for over 20 years, coming to 25 years this year. And I have also been a nurse manager for over 5 years in intensive care. And I have been consulting and advocating for families in intensive care all over the world for over 10 years here at IntensiveCareHotline.com. I'm also the founder and managing director of Intensive Care at Home, where we are sending intensive care nurses into the home for long-term intensive care patients, predominantly for long-term ventilation, tracheostomy, but also BiPAP, CPAP ventilation at home, also for adults and children that are not ventilated but have a tracheostomy. We also provide home TPN, home IV potassium infusions, palliative care, as well as port management, central line management, PICC line management, and also Hickman's line management. And also we are providing an emergency department bypass service where we send critical care nurses into the home to bypass emergency rooms or emergency departments. We do so at the moment for the local area, Western Sydney Health District in Australia. With Intensive Care at Home, we are operating currently all around Australia, but we can help you privately in the US and in the UK. Now, let's get to the questions. And hi, William, nice to see you. And thanks for your comment. Patrik, thanks for all you do, for all of us. You're most welcome. William, I hope your situation is getting better for your dad. In the meantime, I will start answering the questions that have come in during the week. And like I said, you are more than welcome to join me live on the show here, or send me or text your questions here, or type your questions into the chat pad. I will get started in a minute while I'm looking at my emails. Also with Intensive Care at Home, we're also providing NDI support coordination and NDI specialist support coordination for our clients in Australia. Of course, we're also a TAC approved service provider in Victoria, iCare approved service provider in New South Wales, NIISQ in Queensland, and DVA approved service provider all around the country. So let's get started. I have an email here from Mary who says, "Hi Patrik, my husband has been in ICU for 10 weeks. He's stable, but he's not getting better." Now, this is a very brief email, but I still believe I can share some insights there, Mary, because, obviously the biggest challenge for families in intensive care is that they don't know what they don't know. They don't know what to look for. They don't know what questions to ask. they don't know their rights, and they don't know how to manage doctors and nurses in intensive care. Okay, so Mary, I would imagine your husband is most likely on a ventilator with a tracheostomy, which is, what keeps patients in ICU for 10 weeks or more? Well, number of things. Most of the time it's ventilation, it's tracheostomy. Sometimes it can be ECMO. Sometimes it can be dialysis or hemofiltration. That is most of the time what keeps patients in ICU. Sometimes inotropes, inotrope management or vasopressor management can also keep patients in ICU long term. But I would say 90% of the time it's long-term ventilation, tracheostomy that keeps patients in ICU long term. So what should you be doing, Mary, here? Well, you should be getting a second opinion from us, and you should be seeing whether they're doing all the right things for your husband, whether there's anything they're missing. The other thing you should be looking for is intensive care at home. After 10 weeks in ICU, your husband would be depressed. It doesn't look like there's any progress. Question is, can this be done at home? Well, I argue it probably can. Can he be weaned off the ventilator at home? Once again, I argue he can with a service like intensive care at home. Right? Imagine how much the quality of life for your husband and for you will improve if your husband and yourself can go home. Right? It would improve big time. Right? Just have a look at intensivecareathome.com, what is possible. And once again, with intensive care at home, we're operating all around Australia at the moment, in all major capital cities, as well as regional and rural areas. And we send ICU nurses and pediatric ICU nurses into someone's home to improve their quality of life and take the intensive care into someone's home. Right? Makes perfect sense. Right? So that is what you probably should be looking for, but you should also be looking for a second opinion. We can review the medical records, Mary, and we can talk to the doctors and nurses directly, making sure you're not missing anything. Once again, the biggest challenge for families in intensive care is that they don't know what they don't know. They don't know what to look for. They don't know what questions to ask. They don't know their rights, and they don't know how to manage doctors and nurses in intensive care, which is exactly what you're dealing with here. You don't know what you don't know. Because I think if you had a better understanding, you would have sent an email to elaborate what's going on. This is a once-in-a-lifetime situation, Mary, that you can't afford to get wrong. You can't just be following blindly the intensive care team. You need outside input. You need outside input here. Okay, I hope that answers your question, Mary. William, you are asking, do you offer ICU at home in New York City? Yes, potentially by looking for private nurses. That's how we could help you. I hope, William, you're back in New York now. I know you've been in a very challenging situation trying to get back from Florida to New York with your dad. I hope you've managed to get back to New York now. I don't know, maybe you want to say something here where you are at the moment, but to give you the short answer, yes, we can help you by going back to, but by hiring staff privately in New York. Okay, so then next question from Shannon. Shannon says, hi Patrick, my daughter has had seizures and was transferred to Hunt Medical Hospital in Greenville, and they have had her heavily sedated on a ventilator waiting for another hospital to say they will take her as a patient. Let me read that again. My daughter has had seizures and was transferred to Hunt Medical Hospital in Greenville. They've had her heavily sedated on a ventilator waiting for another hospital to say they will take her as a patient. Right. So, why? Okay. If she's okay, she must have had big seizures. And I hope that obviously she can go to another hospital. But why would she need to go to another hospital? Can they not provide what she needs in the current hospital? What is that your preference? What is your preference here? Do you want to keep her in this hospital? Do you want her to go to another hospital? You haven't really specified what's your preference here. And this is across the board. Never negotiate on what you want. Right? Never negotiate on what you want. Too many families in intensive care just get on with things and don't ask the difficult questions. You do need to ask the difficult questions. Is that what you want? Can they give you what you want? Don't be treated as a second-class citizen here. That's one of the biggest challenges is not only that families don't know what they don't know, they also don't know their rights. They don't know how to negotiate. What do you want? Don't renegotiate on that. Right? And this is where we can help you to put things in place that, that's where we can put things in place for you by giving you a second opinion, by talking to them directly, by giving you negotiation strategies depending on the exact clinical situation. There's not one client that didn't learn from us, not one. Oh, have you tried this? Have you looked at that? Should we ask the doctors this? Should we ask the doctors that? There's always something. Right? So I hope that helps you to take the next steps here. William, you're saying you will contact our office. Yes, absolutely. It's probably best if you send me an email to info. Send an email to support@intensive care. Oops. I'm sorry, guys. Can't type and talk at the same time. If you can send an email here, support@intensivecareathome.com. If you can send it here, William, that's the easiest way to get in contact. Okay, so then let's move on to the next question. Who is coming from next question is from Mabangi, who says, "Hi Patrick, my brother is 27 years old. He's been admitted to ICU with pancreatitis and is now ventilated with a breathing tube and on dialysis. Will he survive?" Right. Now, Mabangi, that's a good one, a good question. Not a good situation, but a good question. So, your brother is 27 years of age. That's very young. That's good. But I don't know what got your brother in this situation. Is he potentially a drug user, or is he potentially, drinking too much alcohol? I don't know, and I don't want to speculate. There could be something entirely different what got your brother in this situation. He might have taken a medication that has pancreatitis as a side effect. So I do not want to speculate what got your brother in this situation. However, here is what I think is the good news. If he has pancreatitis and is ventilated on dialysis at 27 years of age, okay, he must be septic, right? He must be in sepsis. And as long as they're doing everything they can, right, while he's having sepsis, he should have every opportunity to survive, right? As long as they're giving him no nutrition, no nasogastric nutrition, and they're giving him TPN instead, as long as they're managing his blood sugar as well, as long as they're checking amylase lipase levels every day. I'm sure they would have done an ultrasound of the pancreas, probably a CT scan of the pancreas, right? As long as they give his pancreas a rest now and give him some TPN, give him antibiotics for the infection, right? keep on going with the dialysis. Yes, he probably has some road of recovery ahead, but as long as they keep doing the right things at his young age, he has a much higher chance to survive than a patient that might be 90 years of age with pancreatitis. Now, keep in mind, on average, about 90% of intensive care patients survive, right? And that puts the odds in a patient's favor. Now, bear in mind, it doesn't mean that people will have a very good quality of life when they survive in intensive care, right? So there's many variables, but if you look at the pure survival rate, your brother has a very good chance of surviving this. Also, what happens in a situation like that is, he will be in an induced coma for a few days, right? He will get antibiotics. Hopefully the pancreas infection will go down. His infection markers will come down. His amylase and lipase levels will come down. Hopefully there won't be any further complications. Also sometimes what can lead to pancreatitis is gallstones. Have they done an ultrasound? Have they ruled out that he's got gallstones, cholecystitis? Any of that, any gallbladder liver issues, has that been ruled out? Has he had an ERCP? What diagnostics has he had? Right? Is he potentially diabetic? Right? Is his blood sugar all over the place? Right? So those are the questions you should be looking for. And obviously also the answers you should be getting. And go from there. Ask those questions and get back to me and see how he's going. Or of course, the shortcut is to reach out to us directly here at intensivecarehotline.com. And then we can help you, give you a second opinion, making sure the intensive care team is doing all the right things. I talk to them directly for our clients, and ask all the right questions. I ask the questions that you haven't even considered asking, but must be asked, so that you make informed decisions, have peace of mind, control, power, and influence. Okay, let's get on to the next question from Leo. Hi, Leo. Nice to see you again. So you're saying my father was transferred to LTAC after our last chat. Yep, I remember that. He had a UTI, turned into septic shock. Trying to have dialysis with no luck. Keeps failing. Dialysis keeps failing midstream. What could cause this? Oh my goodness, Leo, I'm so sorry to hear that. Leo, that means your dad is probably back in ICU. Is that fair to say? But irregardless whether your dad is back in ICU, he must be back in ICU if he has a septic shock. And if he's on dialysis, he must be back in ICU, unless he is in an LTAC with an ICU attached, but those LTACs seem to be rare. Leo, what could cause dialysis failing? I can tell you what it probably causes failing. So, if your dad is in sepsis or septic shock, his blood pressure would be very labile. Probably better to say his blood pressure would be very low. He would most likely be on vasopressors and inotropes. What happens is if blood pressure drops below a certain level, obviously there's the risk that a patient could die because the blood pressure is getting too low. One thing that happens in ICU then is to start patients on inotropes and vasopressors to get the blood pressure up with medications to make blood pressure compatible with life. If the blood pressure drops below 90 systolic, the risk is that major vital organs such as the brain, lungs, liver, heart, kidneys do not get oxygen perfusion, right? And if that's the case, obviously that would trigger further complications. So therefore, you need to start someone on inotropes or vasopressors. Okay, I'm almost 100% certain that's what's happened. Now, once that's happened, and they started your dad on dialysis, his blood pressure will plummet again because you're extracting 150 to 300 mils of blood from the body going into into the filter, into the hemodialysis machine, into the dialysis machine, plummeting the blood pressure even further, and then the dialysis machine will stop working. Now, here is an important question, Leo. Is your dad on dialysis, or is he on hemofiltration, also known as CRRT or continuous renal replacement therapy? So here's why that is important. So let's just say someone has dialysis. They're doing dialysis maybe 3 times a week, sometimes 4 times a week, to keep, to basically replace the function of the kidneys. Now, on those 3 or 4 days of dialysis, there's a sharp and quick onset of removing fluids, maybe 500 mils to a liter within just a few hours. Now, for someone that's hemodynamically stable, they can tolerate that. Okay, no big deal. But your dad is not hemodynamically stable, and therefore his blood pressure probably plummets when he's on dialysis, and then they can't do dialysis. That pushes him back to CRRT or hemofiltration, because CRRT, continuous renal replacement therapy, or hemofiltration, is much smoother. So, for example, CRRT usually runs over 24 hours, over multiple days. That means you can remove fluids slowly. You can remove 50 mils an hour, 100 mils an hour. You can run the filtration much slower. It's much more gentle and much less likely to cause complications, right? So, Leo, you have to ask whether he's on CRRT or dialysis. And then, Leo, you are saying here, my father didn't have any issues with his kidneys prior to being discharged to this LTAC, nor pressure wounds. Now he's having great difficulty with dialysis. For some unknown reason, it keeps stopping. I don't think it's an unknown reason, Leo. I don't think there's an unknown reason. There's usually a very simple reason. Like I just explained to you, dialysis versus hemofiltration or CRRT, right? And you are also saying discharge to the LTAC didn't have any pressure wounds. Well, I tell you what I think has happened. My theory with what you've shared. He ended up having pressure sores. The pressure sores caused an infection. The infection caused sepsis. The sepsis caused him to have kidney failure. Seen it hundreds of times. That is most likely what's happened here. And this is one of the reasons, not the only reason, but this is one of the reasons why I vehemently oppose ICU patients going to LTAC. I'm so opposed to this, and here is another case in point. It's just terrible, right? But, Leo, to work your way out of this dilemma, first of all, is he in the right place? Well, probably not. Probably not, because otherwise this wouldn't have happened to begin with, right? And I would also be curious to know, Leo, if he's in ICU or if he's still in LTAC. If he's still in LTAC, they probably wouldn't be able to do hemofiltration or CRRT. They probably wouldn't. It's much easier in ICU to do either hemofiltration, CRRT, or dialysis. Okay. The other one last thing there, Leo, before I come to Nikki's questions here. Leo, one more final thing. The other reason why dialysis might be stopping is because the dialysis filter clots. That is another reason why it might not work. And if the dialysis filter clots, there are clots building in there, then there are dialysis clots in there, then is he on anticoagulation such as heparin? Right? That is one of the questions here. Okay, so let's come to Nikki's questions. Nikki, you're saying my uncle had no vital signs and docs did CPR for 40 minutes. On life support right now. There's a family meeting on Monday. What should we be asking? They did an MRI scan and they're saying there is brain swelling and that he is in a critical condition. Okay, well, two questions here, Nikki. A family meeting in intensive care, 9 times out of 10 is a vehicle for intensive care teams to deliver bad news, and it's a vehicle for intensive care teams to put pressure on families. Question is, do you want that? There are questions you should be asking. However, the first question you should be asking, will you benefit from this family meeting? Will your uncle benefit from this family meeting? Will your family benefit from this family meeting? Now, before you ask what questions should you be asking, I tell you what's the very first question you should be asking. You should be asking the intensive care team for a meeting agenda. That is the very first question you should be asking. And you should be asking for that meeting agenda in writing. So why is that? My experience with family meetings in intensive care is not a good one. At least when I was nursing in ICU still. And, family meetings in intensive care are designed to push intensive care teams' agendas. What's their agenda? Their agenda is to save money, to maximize revenue, to free up ICU beds, to free up ICU resources such as staff, equipment, etc. So, I am looking into my crystal ball now, and I argue that if you go to that family meeting on Monday without having an agenda from the intensive care team in writing, you will be at high risk to be walked all over by the intensive care team, right? They will present your uncle's case in a very negative light. They will say it's all hopeless. He should have palliative care because it's quote unquote not in his best interest to continue treatment because he won't have any quote unquote quality of life going forward. That's what I predict is going to happen. It'll be a doom and gloom meeting, right? And then they will tell you, and you as a family need to make a decision by, 3 o'clock tomorrow, sort of thing. Do you want that? Or do you want to get an agenda in writing to begin with, and then make a decision whether you go there or not? Because in the meantime, what they need to do in the meantime, let's just say you decide not to go. If you decide not to go, the onus is back on them to continue treatment. You will send a very strong message by not going, or you will send a very strong message by you asking for an agenda in writing. And they told you it's really bad. Yeah, of course. And it might be. I'm not. But okay, let's just take a worst case scenario here, Nikki. Let's just say the situation is really bad. Okay, and let's just say that your uncle might not survive this, irregardless of what they offer, what they do. Let's just take the worst case scenario. And God forbid this is moving towards an end of life situation. You would still want to be in control in how you manage an end of life situation. Because for intensive care teams, it's all often a one size fits all. If you say, yep, let's stop everything tomorrow at 3 o'clock, they will. But, there's often more to an end of life situation. Maybe, again, I'm painting the worst case scenario here, and I'm coming to the best case scenario in a minute. Maybe you are waiting for other family members to come in from interstate, from overseas, who knows? Maybe you are waiting for some religious, spiritual, cultural ceremony to take place. Wouldn't that be important for you and your family? I'm sure it would be, And so you have to consider very carefully here what you do, what your next step is, and you have to be very measured in your approach. And I argue that by you asking for an agenda in writing, you will be very measured, right? Here is another tip. Any meeting of relevance in life, business meetings, whatever meetings you have, generally speaking, happen under the umbrella of a meeting agenda. Now, I think we agree that this is most likely a life or death decision, or a life or death meeting. So if we're having meeting agendas for all other meetings in life, why is there no agenda for a potentially life or death meeting? I'll let you answer that question. That's why you need to get one. You need to be prepared, right? In terms of questions you should be asking, Nikki, there's a website, not a website, a blog post that I've written maybe 2 years ago, what questions to ask. But, and it's going into much detail way beyond this call. But there is I'll post the link here in a minute, that you can go to that link. Or obviously, after this call, you could book a time with me and we can go through things. But what you should be focusing on right away is, what's his prognosis? Does he have irreversible brain damage? But even if they say he does, you still I wouldn't rush into anything. I would not rush into anything here, Nikki. It sounds to me like it's only been a few days. Doesn't actually say how many days. Would be good to know how many days your uncle has been in this situation, right? And because there's also this old sort of adage of, well, you have to make a decision now. No. The only decision you have to make is to give your uncle time. It's been 5 days. Not a long time, Nikki. Not a long time. Why would you rush into anything here? Why would you rush a decision here? The worst thing you can do is rush into anything. I give you another tip here, Nikki. Make decisions today that you don't regret in 12 months or 2 years' time. Right? And here is why. I can't tell you how many families that contact us and they say, hey, my mom, my dad, my spouse, my brother, my sister, my uncle, whoever was in ICU a year ago. They pressured us to end their life because they said it would be, quote unquote, in their best interest to die. That's madness. And then a year later, they come to us and say, oh, I've seen your website. I didn't realize there were options. I didn't realize this is what's really happening. How can you agree to stop someone's life without considering a second opinion? How? So Nikki, make decisions today that you don't regret in 12 months' time. Very important. Do you think you might regret today to let your uncle pass away, but not regret it in 12 months? Do you think you might have second thoughts? Right? Probably. Because that's what we're seeing. It boggles my mind that people just run blindly into family meetings without doing their research. It boggles me that people in life or death situations, when they have family members in intensive care, don't get a second opinion. It boggles my mind, especially since what we've seen with COVID in the last 3 years, with all the nonsense that was going on, that the media and the governments have sold us on. People have to be more critical. They have to start thinking for themselves. Well, the good news is we are here at intensivecarehotline.com. We can help you fast. You just need to have a look at our testimonial section, what clients say about us when they work with us, and have a look at our podcast section where we have client interviews as well. And Nikki, to come back to, you're saying the meeting is to give you quote unquote options. Yes, I can tell you what the options will be. They will tell you, well, end of life is the best option, right? Because they will tell you that, oh, well, he won't have any quality of life if he survives. So therefore, it's quote unquote in his best interest to die, right? The only way you will know whether your uncle can improve or not is with time. That's the only way you can find out whether your uncle will improve or not. And 5 days in ICU is not a long time. Not a long time at all. The other option they might give you is to potentially do a tracheostomy, and then potentially go to LTAC. I don't know where you are, Nikki, whether you are in the US or in the UK or in Australia or somewhere else. You know, that might be another option they will give you. Yeah. Okay. Oh, you're in Canada. Okay, sure. Well, Canada's health system is falling apart at the moment, from what I'm hearing. Right? From what I'm hearing. And here's this, Nikki. The worst case scenario for an intensive care unit is to look after someone indefinitely with an uncertain outcome. And I believe your uncle presents that worst case scenario. Yeah, and the Canadian healthcare system is falling apart. And, I do not want to get political here, but I think it is important to recognize that in Canada at the moment, politically, there seems to be euthanasia laws popping up out of nowhere. Do euthanasia for this person, offer euthanasia to that person. So, if we offer euthanasia to people, for people with a disability, for people, from what I'm hearing, who have become bankrupt, for people with mental health illnesses, if we offer euthanasia to them, chances of someone in ICU getting a second chance are getting slower and slower, and getting slimmer and slimmer, right? Just to think about that. And that's why you need to push back, and you will need to push back very hard, Nikki. You will need to push back very hard. I hope that helps, Nikki. Get an agenda in writing and expect them to jump up and down and not liking it, but that you need to take that as a compliment. Get an agenda in writing. And I will post that link in a minute. And if not, I'll post it afterwards, what questions to ask, or you can just book a time with me. It's a pleasure, Nikki. All the best. Okay, Leo, you are saying he was transferred to a local hospital. Yes, of course. He hasn't been on pressures for the last 48 hours, but he would have been, And Leo, this is what I told you last time when we last spoke, that, now he's gone from ICU to LTAC, and now he's probably in another hospital or in another ICU. That is the whole madness around going to LTAC in the first place, because, now he's been in 3 places within no time. That is madness. And it's not in your dad's best interest. It's not in a patient's best interest. Okay. Now there's a question from Elisa. Hi, Elisa. Thanks for joining the show. Elisa, you are saying, my mom is in an LTAC, has multiple infections from tunnel pressure wounds, and she has a UTI. I have been given discharge papers claiming she is stable. How do I challenge the discharge after a failed appeal? Okay, so when you're saying you've been given discharge papers, where would she be going to? Where would she be going to? Will she be going to a skilled nursing facility? Has she been discharged home? Is she still ventilated? Does she have a tracheostomy? Can you tell me a little bit more? Where is she, or where should she be going next? Is she ventilated? Does she have a trach? Another question is the pressure wound and the UTI. Did that happen in LTAC? Right? And tell me more about your situation there, Elisa, please. Okay, she's meant to go to a SNF, skilled nursing facility. Okay. How long, Elisa, was she in this LTAC? If you could please answer that question, that would be helpful. And I'm pretty sure that, like many other families in LTAC, they would have told you, oh, let's get her to LTAC so she can be weaned off the ventilator, and then it didn't happen, because that is what happens all the time. You know, tell me a bit more here, Elisa, please. In the meantime, I will answer the next question. Yes, trached and going to skilled nursing. Yes, it happened in LTAC. Yeah, okay. So here is what you need to do. She was there 30 days. Yeah. So, and this is a warning again for anyone who's at the verge of going from ICU to LTAC. This is for our US clients and for our US audience specifically, because LTACs only exist in the US. That's why you should never go from ICU to LTAC, because what they do is they tell you in ICU, oh, you got to go to LTAC. LTAC is specialized on weaning patients off ventilation and trach. Well, then it doesn't happen. Clearly the case here in Elisa's situation. And then they tell you after 14 days, oh, we're not moving in the right direction here. Now she needs to go to a skilled nursing facility. And then things go from bad to worse. And I can't tell you how many families contact us and say, my family member is in an LTAC, now they've got pressure sores and they've got pressure wounds, and now they are septic, and now in Leo's case they've gone to back to ICU, which is what often happens, you know. So here is what you should be doing, Elisa, in a situation like that. Obviously, I don't know what your appeal was based on, right? An appeal should be coming from a clinician, right? We can do your appeal, for example, on your behalf, but we would need to look at the medical records, or we would need to talk to them directly to find out exactly what's happened. But the reality is an appeal should be coming from a clinician, you know, to say, well, if she's got pressure wounds and it's your fault, then you should probably hold them accountable, right? Have you asked those questions? Do you hold them accountable? Now, you're also saying your mom is still having a tracheostomy and she's not mobile. Why has she not been mobilized? No wonder she's having pressure sores, right? No wonder she's having pressure sores if she's not getting mobilized. So, how do you challenge this? So, A, you need to make some noise. You need to challenge it with hospital executive or LTAC executive, right? And if they've caused the pressure wounds, well, that's nursing negligence. People could lose their nursing license. Trying to blame you for what? That sounds ridiculous to me. You know, they are responsible for the care of your mom, not you. I'm sure you're doing everything within your power to channel it in the right directions, you know. I think what you need to do here is challenge it. But, you know, do you have access, Elisa, do you have access to the medical records? Right? You have access to the medical records. And Leo, yes, you have now confirmed that your dad was in ICU. Yeah, of course, he's back in ICU. And I'm pretty sure he's back in another ICU, you know, for helping to reposition her. Well, if they were doing the repositioning right, she wouldn't have pressure sores, I argue. Right? You do the repositioning correctly, you don't get any pressure sores. Right? And it would be a week. They told you it would be a week. A week for what? I'm not following here. Okay, so while I'm waiting for you, Elisa, you know, this is why I am constantly saying, do not go to LTAC. Do not go to LTAC. No matter what you do, do not go to LTAC. You can look back at these YouTube lives here that I'm doing. There's almost someone every week who tells me about, disaster in LTAC. They told you about a week for the medical records. Fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. Well, here is how you should position this then, Elisa. You should be positioning this in a way that she can't go anywhere until you've had a professional look at the medical records, let a professional do the appeal, right? And your right to a second opinion. But what I would focus on in the meantime is I would focus on the nursing negligence. A pressure sore is nursing negligence. Nothing more, nothing less, right? And you could sue them for that. It's harmful to your mom having pressure sores. Unbelievable. So get access to the medical records. We can help you look at them. We can do the review for you, give you the second opinion, and do the appeal for you. That's the best next step forward. Okay. Now, are there any other questions? Elisa, does that help you? Again, I can only encourage you to set up a call with me, so we can take this further and help you through my consulting and advocacy. Right? So what you can do is you can book a time with me here. I just need to, if I disappear for a moment, I just need to get a couple of links. I do apologize if you can't see me at the moment. I just get a couple of links so that you can get hold of me afterwards. So yeah, but while I'm doing this and I keep talking, do not go to LTAC. Guys, do not go to LTAC. It's no matter what you do, and we have helped so many families keeping them in ICU instead of going to LTAC. We have helped so many families, to improve their situation. So, there is definitely hope and strategies out there that will help, So you can book a time with me here. I'll just post my calendar here. And then also you can schedule a call with me just at the link that I posted there. And then the other thing that I'm quickly doing is, sorry if I'm not on camera for a moment, I will also send you a link. This is for Nikki, but for anyone really, what questions to ask. Okay, here is a link to what questions you can ask. Or you should be asking when your loved one is in ICU. This is mainly for Nikki. Oh, hang on, that's not quite the right link. Apologies. And if I sound like a broken record, do not go to LTAC under any circumstances. Never go to LTAC. It's just not where your loved one should be and what your loved one deserves. Okay. What other questions are there? What other question do you have? There's a question here from William. If Medicare tells you there is no other choice, what can be done? Yep. So, have you done an appeal, William? I can't remember now whether you've done an appeal or not. Right. If you have done an appeal, and let's just run through the worst case scenario. If you have done an appeal with Medicare and Medicare says there is no other choice, what can be done? Well, that's when you need to go to a hospital executive, right? From my experience, one can override the other. Medicare can override the hospital and hospital can override Medicare, especially if there's been medical negligence. Like in Elisa's situation, it looks like there's been medical negligence or nursing negligence, right? So that's the card you need to play. In Elisa's situation, let's just say Medicare says there's no other choice. Well, there's still medical and nursing negligence, which means that you can hold them accountable for the negligence. They told you, William, he's going to be the same level of care. What do you mean by that? By him going from ICU to LTAC, he's going to be the same level of care? Did you just see what Elisa shared here with us? Did you hear what Leo shared with us? It's not the same level of care. It's a disaster area. That's what it is. Yeah, they told you something. It's going to be the same. Yeah, they told you that. Sure. It's not what people say, William. It's what people do. And it's what the outcome is. Yeah, it's worse. Of course it's worse. Absolutely worse. You can also have there would be some podcast interviews that I've done over the years with clients that have shared their experience in LTAC. It's absolutely horrible. And if you're watching this and you know of a good LTAC, I want to know. But my experience just has shown there is no good LTAC. Maybe there is. If you know anyone, one of them, let me know so we can share it here with our audience. Elisa, you're saying they bundle it like car insurance. It's not worth it. Yeah, that's right. It's a one-size-fits-all solution for them. And people are not a one-size-fits-all archetype. People are very different. People are very different. So, okay. Look, I do want to slowly wrap this up. I might have time for one more quick question. But I do want to slowly wrap this up today. Obviously, if you have a loved one in intensive care, I do these YouTube lives once a week, usually on a Saturday evening, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in the US, which is 3:30 p.m. Pacific Time, Saturday in the US. It is 10:30 a.m. my time on a Sunday morning, Sydney, Melbourne time, and 11:30 p.m. UK time on a Saturday night. So, do you let the hospital bill you directly? No, I would not, William. I would put the onus back on the hospital. What I mean by that is, especially if there's negligence, you gotta go back to the hospital and put the onus back on them. So, for example, with Elisa here, I would hold them accountable for the pressure sores. My experience is, William, that people do not get billed directly if there's negligence, if you challenge them on negligence and so forth. That is my experience. Right? But you got to approach it in the right angle. You got to look at the weaknesses of them, of the hospital. Where are they falling short? And use that to your advantage. Leverage that to its full extent. We had a situation a few weeks ago where a client was kind of in a similar situation, and the ICU told him, you have run out of entitlements. And he went back to Medicare, and Medicare confirmed with him, no, you don't. You haven't run out of entitlements. Right? So hospitals are also known as lying to families at times. Okay, so look out for the YouTube lives that are coming up. Ask me anything once a week, usually Sunday morning, 10:30 a.m. Sydney, Melbourne time, which is 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on a Saturday, 3:30 p.m. Pacific time, 5:30 p.m. Central Time on a Saturday, and 4:30 p.m. Mountain Time on a Saturday. Now, we also have a membership for families of critically ill patients in intensive care at intensivecarehotline.com. you click on the membership link and you can get access there, or you go to intensivecaresupport.org directly. In the membership, you have access to me and my team 24 hours a day in a membership area and via email, and we answer all questions intensive care related. I also talk to doctors and nurses directly. Obviously, I do offer one-on-one consulting and advocacy over the phone, Skype, Zoom, WhatsApp. I talk to you and your families directly, so that you make informed decisions, have peace of mind, control, power, and influence. And you will see that the dynamics will change very quickly once I either set you up with the right questions to ask, or if I talk to doctors and nurses directly. We also offer medical record reviews in real time, so that you can make informed decisions, have peace of mind, control, power, and influence in real time, and so you can have a second opinion in real time, right? We also offer medical record reviews after intensive care if you have unanswered questions, if you need closure, or if you are simply suspecting medical negligence. And I also represent you in family meetings with intensive care teams. Just as Nikki was saying a minute ago, they've got potentially a family meeting lined up, but Nikki, once again, get an agenda in writing and then decide whether you go there or not, or whether you want to add on to the agenda. But you will benefit from me being in that meeting, because I've been in hundreds of meetings with family meetings with intensive care teams, and they follow the same script every single time. They know what to say, they know how to say it, they know when to say it, and they know what information not to be shared with you. Right? And if you don't know what to expect, if you don't know what to come, you'll fight a losing and an uphill battle. Right? So, I hope that helps. I hope that was valuable for everyone. I will wrap this up. If you like my videos, subscribe to my YouTube channel for regular updates for families in intensive care. Click the like button, click the notification bell, comment below what you want to see next, and what questions and insights you have from the videos, and share the video with your friends and families. Thank you so much for watching, and tell families about the YouTube live next week. Get them to sign up for our email newsletter. Thanks for watching. This is Patrik Hutzel from intensivecarehotline.com and intensivecareathome.com, and I will talk to you very soon. Take care for now.